Ever heard of a guy named Julian Assange?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the WikiLeaks guy.
Right.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into his world, going way beyond those headlines, to uncover what made him tick and why his story even matters today.
Right.
We're using his Wikipedia page as our guide, and trust me, it is a wild ride.
It's true. We're talking about a man who ignited global debates about, like, government secrets, internet freedom, what it even means to be a journalist now in the digital age.
Exactly. So forget that image of him holed up on that embassy balcony. We're rewinding the clock back to Assange's early days in Australia. Picture this. Young computer whiz already making waves back in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. He wasn't just playing around with code.
Right from the start, Assange was challenging the norm. He created something called the rubber hose deniable encryption system.
Okay.
Now, I know that sounds technical, but imagine this. You've got this sensitive information and someone's trying to force you to reveal it. This system would let you give them a decoy, like a fake set of data, hiding the real deal.
Wow. Like something straight out of a spy movie.
Exactly.
So even back then, he was already thinking about protecting secrets and fighting against, coercion?
Exactly. It speaks volumes about his early commitment to safeguarding information, particularly for, those without power.
And this all ties back to his involvement with, the Cipherpunk movement, right? This was a group of folks in the 90s who were really ahead of their time, basically saying, hey, in the digital age, privacy is paramount, especially for, everyday people.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they predicted the world we live in now, with all this talk about data, privacy, and government surveillance.
They believed cryptography, basically the art of writing and solving codes. It wasn't just about technical security, It was a tool to empower individuals against powerful institutions.
Right.
And that was a core belief for Assange. Privacy for the people, but transparency for governments and big corporations.
That's a pretty stark contrast. You're saying average individuals deserve privacy in the digital age, while those in power shouldn't be able to hide behind secrecy. It really makes you think, does true democracy require radical transparency from our leaders?
It's a question that's still very much alive today, and it's at the heart of what Assange was trying to do. And this brings us to WikiLeaks.
Ah, yes. WikiLeaks, bursting onto the scene, releasing sensitive documents that, let's be honest, made some powerful people very uncomfortable. What were some of those early publications that put WikiLeaks on the map?
One of the first major releases was in 2008 when WikiLeaks published documents from a Swiss bank. It was called Bank Julius Baer.
Okay.
These documents exposed alleged tax evasion and money laundering schemes. This wasn't just some small-time operation.
Right.
WikiLeaks was taking on powerful financial institutions right from the get-go.
They were going for the jugular, and then came those earth-shattering leaks from Chelsea Manning starting in 2010.
Yeah.
That's when things really started heating up.
The Manning leaks were a game changer. They included the Collateral Murder video, which sent shockwaves around the world.
I remember that video. It was incredibly difficult to watch. Can you refresh our memory on what it showed and why it caused such an uproar?
It depicted a U.S. military helicopter attack in Baghdad back in 2007. In the video, you can hear the helicopter gunship crew targeting a group of people on the ground, including 2 journalists from Reuters. They opened fire, killing multiple people, including those journalists.
And all of it was caught on camera, showing the brutal reality of war in a way that, traditional news often couldn't. It was raw, unfiltered, and incredibly disturbing.
And it sparked a global conversation about war reporting in the digital age. Because here's the question. Is it even possible to show the true cost of war without crossing ethical lines? It's a question you still grapple with today, especially with the rise of social media and citizen journalism.
It makes you question everything, doesn't it? Where do we draw the line? What information has the right to be seen? And how do we hold those in power accountable when they'd rather operate in the shadows?
Those are the kinds of questions that Assange and WikiLeaks were forcing the world to confront.
And those questions would only get more complicated, more controversial as Assange's story unfolded. But before we dive into that, let's talk about another turning point in this saga. The Swedish sexual assault allegations.
Right.
And Assange's decision to seek asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy.
You see, shortly after those Manning leaks, sent shockwaves around the globe,
Right.
Assange found himself facing some legal troubles of his own.
Yeah.
In late 2010, Swedish authorities issued a European arrest warrant for him
Okay.
in connection with sexual assault allegations.
And that's when he made that decision to seek asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. Right.
Great, yeah.
It was a move that captivated the world and ignited like a firestorm of debate.
Absolutely. Assange claimed that those allegations were, politically motivated. A smokescreen, basically, designed to extradite him to the United States.
Right.
He believed that if he set foot in the U.S., he would face prosecution for his role in those WikiLeaks publications, specifically the Manning leaks.
So he was basically trapped in that embassy for years, living under like this constant eye of surveillance, unable to even step outside. Talk about a catch-22. It's almost hard to fathom.
The situation became like a lightning rod for discussions about freedom of the press.
Yeah.
The limits of government power and, the lengths to which a nation might go to silence dissent.
Right.
It was this global debate with no easy answers.
And it wasn't just politicians and, pundits weighing in, right? Even within journalistic circles, there were disagreements about whether Assange was a hero or, like, a liability, whether his actions, aligned with ethical journalism or crossed a dangerous line.
Exactly. Some argued that responsible journalism, it involves safeguarding sources and carefully weighing the potential harm of publishing sensitive information.
Right.
They felt that, while transparency is crucial, recklessly exposing classified details could put lives at risk.
On the other hand, you have those who believe that the public had this, like, inherent right to know what their government was doing, even if it meant revealing, uncomfortable truths that those in power would rather keep hidden. It's a tension that has existed for as long as,
Sure.
governments and journalists have.
Right.
That push and pull between, secrecy and transparency.
Precisely. And this is where it gets even more complicated, because while all of this was happening,
Right.
Assange was still actively involved in assisting other whistleblowers.
Right, like Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about like a pivotal moment in the history of, surveillance and digital privacy. Here you have this former NSA contractor, Snowden, blowing the whistle on massive government surveillance programs that were operating in the shadows. It sent chills down people's spines.
And Assange and WikiLeaks played a crucial role in helping Snowden, evade capture after he leaked those bombshell documents in 2013.
Right.
They provided him with legal and logistical support, ultimately helping him secure asylum in Russia.
Which, of course, only further fueled the debate about, like, Assange's allegiances and his motivations.
Right.
Was he a journalist? Was he a publisher? A political activist? An enemy of the state? It seemed like everyone had an opinion.
The U.S. government certainly viewed his actions as a direct threat, not just to national security, but to, like, the very fabric of diplomacy and international relations.
Right.
And then there were those chat logs that allegedly showed Assange actively assisting Chelsea Manning in cracking a password related to those leaks.
So this wasn't just about publishing information that someone else had obtained.
Right.
But potentially, like, participating in the hacking itself.
Yeah.
It was a game changer in the eyes of U.S. prosecutors.
Yeah.
They argued that this went, far beyond the traditional role of a journalist.
And they had a point. Because if they could prove Assange was actively involved in illegal hacking,
right,
it would allow them to sidestep this thorny issue of press freedom, which would be much harder to argue in court.
Right.
Charging a journalist simply for publishing classified information, even if it's obtained from a source, would have enormous First Amendment implications.
Right, because in the U.S., freedom of the press is, like, enshrined in the Constitution. It's a cornerstone of American democracy.
Exactly.
So the U.S. government was walking a tightrope here. And then in 2016, things took another dramatic turn with the U.S. presidential election.
Yeah. And the infamous DNC email leaks.
Those leaks, which happened just months before the election, dropped a bombshell on the American political landscape.
Right.
They raised serious questions about Russian interference in the election and the extent to which Assange might have been involved in that interference.
Right, because WikiLeaks published those emails, which were damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Yeah.
And they always maintained they had nothing to do with the Russian government. But the timing was, like, incredibly suspect.
It fed into these, like, existing narratives about Assange being, anti-establishment.
Right.
Someone willing to, like, upend the status quo, even if it meant, potentially disrupting a democratic election. So we've got Assange holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy, this, political and media firestorm raging around him, and then bam, the 2016 election throws gasoline on the fire. What a wild ride. But eventually, even the most unusual situations have to end, right?
Yeah, they do. After nearly 7 years of asylum, Assange's time in the embassy came to an end in 2019.
Right.
The new Ecuadorian president decided to revoke his asylum, claiming Assange had violated, embassy rules and international agreements. You could argue it was a sign of, shifting political tides.
So it's 2019. Assange is pulled from the embassy and taken straight into British custody. What a moment that must have been. It felt like the whole world was watching.
It was a dramatic fall from grace. He was initially arrested for jumping bail back in 2012 when he first sought refuge in the embassy. He ended up serving a short sentence for that. But the bigger legal battle, the one with the U.S., was just heating up.
Because the U.S. government had been waiting in the wings this whole time building their case.
And they weren't messing around. Shortly after his arrest, they unsealed an indictment charging Assange with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion.
Okay.
This was specifically related to those Manning leaks we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
The U.S. government was alleging that Assange went beyond simply publishing leaked information. They were saying he actively participated in the hacking itself.
So their argument was that Assange wasn't just a journalist reporting on hacked materials, but a co-conspirator in the act of obtaining those materials illegally.
Exactly.
That's a huge distinction.
Exactly. And it was a strategic move on the part of U.S. prosecutors.
Right.
By framing the case this way, they were trying to navigate around those thorny First Amendment issues we discussed.
Right.
Remember, charging a journalist for publishing classified information, even if it was leaked by someone else, would have enormous implications for press freedom in the United States.
It would set a dangerous precedent.
Yeah.
Potentially criminalizing the act of, investigative journalism itself.
Precisely. But by focusing on the alleged hacking conspiracy, the U.S. government could kind of sidestep that whole debate.
Right.
And go after Assange for what they claimed were illegal activities, regardless of the content he published.
It was a bold move. It really upped the stakes. And then the following year, things escalated even further.
Right. In 2020, the U.S. government added 17 more charges against Assange, this time under the Espionage Act.
Okay.
And this was big. These charges were directly related to WikiLeaks' publication of classified information.
So for those of us who aren't legal scholars, what exactly is the Espionage Act, and why did this cause such a stir?
Well, it's actually a law from World War I, and it's been used to target whistleblowers and journalists in the past.
Okay.
Essentially, it criminalizes the unauthorized possession or disclosure of information related to national defense.
I see where this is going. The U.S. government was arguing that Assange's actions by publishing those leaked documents violated this act and threatened national security.
Exactly. And this move to charge him under the Espionage Act sent shockwaves through, the media world. Journalists and press freedom advocates argue that this is a blatant attack on the First Amendment.
Right.
And a dangerous attempt to criminalize journalism itself.
So you've got this high-stakes legal battle playing out, Assange fighting extradition to the U.S., his supporters claiming he's a political prisoner, being silenced for, exposing government wrongdoing, and the U.S. government arguing he's a dangerous criminal who needs to be held accountable.
And all this time, remember, Assange is being held in a British prison, his health reportedly deteriorating.
Right.
The extradition hearings dragged on for years, with appeals, legal challenges, arguments about his health, and the potential treatment he'd face in a U.S. prison. It was a long and messy process.
And then, in a surprising twist, Assange struck a plea deal with U.S. prosecutors.
We did. In June 2024, Assange pleaded guilty to one count of conspiring to obtain and disclose national defense information, a charge under the Espionage Act.
Wow.
But in exchange, the other charges were dropped, and he was sentenced to time served.
So after more than a decade of legal battles and controversy, he was finally free to return to Australia.
That's right. And that's where we find ourselves today, grappling with the legacy of Julian Assange. Was he a hero, a villain, something in between? He's a figure who defies easy categorization, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He shone a light on government secrets, sparked a global conversation about surveillance and, privacy in the digital age, and forced us to confront these uncomfortable truths about power, transparency, and the role of journalism in a democracy. Love him or hate him, his story is a reminder that we're still wrestling with these fundamental questions, and they're more relevant now than ever.
His case also highlights the the profound challenges and responsibilities faced by journalists in the digital age.
Yeah.
Where do we draw the line between informing the public and potentially endangering lives? How do we balance national security concerns with the public's right to know? These are questions we'll continue to grapple with for years to come.
And what about Assange's own writing? His book, Cipherpunks, Freedom and the Future of the Internet, offers a glimpse into his thinking, his motivations. It's a fascinating read for anyone wanting to, dive deeper into his worldview.
Absolutely. It provides valuable context for understanding his actions, his beliefs. Ultimately, how history will judge Julian Assange and the impact of WikiLeaks remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, his story is a powerful reminder that the fight for transparency, accountability, and the free flow of information, it's an ongoing one, a fight that demands our attention, our critical thinking.
Well said. It's been quite a deep dive, wouldn't you say?
It has.
A story full of twists, turns, and lingering questions. So what do you think? Was Assange a hero? A villain? A complex figure who defies easy labels? We'll leave that for you to decide. Until next time, keep those minds curious, and thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.